I'm interviewing my dad, David Cassavant, on his experiences of the 9/11 attacks. How old were you on September 11th, 2001?
Yes, Amy. I was, 38 years old on 2001, September.
Where were you when the attacks happened?
Well, I'd just gotten back from my sister's wedding the day before in South Carolina. And actually, I was at home and working in my office, and I heard it on the radio and immediately turned on the TV and saw the building smoking.
Did you lose anyone in the attack?
Yes, ultimately I found out after learning it was a terrorist attack, and I found out the next day that ultimately I lost my best friend, Michael Finnegan, a guy who I went to high school with. I spent a lot of time growing up with, a lot of time playing golf with, a lot of time doing fun things with the kids too. We were good friends in high school, maintained good friendship throughout college. We went to each other's weddings. I was his best man. He was mine, and we stayed in very close touch until that day.
How did you find out about what happened?
Well, I knew he was working in that building, working for Cantor Fitzgerald. So I had a very bad feeling. He was in the North Tower, which was the first one that got hit. And I had a very bad feeling that he was going to be one of the victims. However, I did not call anyone. Everybody was in a state of shock. I knew his wife, and I knew he had young kids, so I did not call until the very next morning. The next morning I called the house, his house in New Jersey at 6 a.m. and his wife picked up the phone on the first ring. And then I just knew that things weren't, that she was waiting by the phone to hear news about her husband.
What was your first action when you heard about what happened?
I remember I was in the car. I was driving. I had an early appointment in Albany, New York. I was driving there from Boston. And when she picked up the phone on the first ring, she didn't have to say anything. I knew. And I said, "Oh no, please don't tell me." And she said, "I haven't heard from Mike." And she had been up all night, and I knew. And when I found out, I lost control of my emotions. I began to cry, and I had to pull the car over. I just was crying, sobbing uncontrollably. I pulled over to the side of the road, and I just cried for 10 minutes. It was so tragic, the most awful thing that had happened in my life up to that point.
How did 9/11 impact your outlook on the world?
Well, 9/11 for me was really the first awful thing that happened in my lifetime. At that point, up to that point, I was somewhat naive. Up to that point, there was really nothing bad that happened during my lifetime. And there are things that were happening on other sides of the world, but this was really the first awful thing that happened to America, where America was threatened in my lifetime. This is something like the attack on Pearl Harbor, I think, for other generations. This isn't the first awful thing that that's happened to America, but this was the first thing that happened in my lifetime, and it made me think more about the world and about the United States and how the United States is viewed, and helped me appreciate terrorism more. Before that, terrorism was some remote thing that happened in other parts of the world. It wasn't something that happened in the United States. I never felt as though I was unsafe living in the United States. So that was a moment when I think we all felt more vulnerable, where there was somewhat loss of innocence. Up to that point, we all felt secure. We all felt that nothing awful would come to us, this generation, my generation. But it changed everybody's outlook, my generation, on the world, and it made us appreciate that we aren't safe, and that we need to protect our country and protect our freedom, and we need to try and keep these others away from us.
Do you do anything to honor Mike's memory?
Yes, what I do is I stay in touch with his wife, and I stay close to his parents. I know his parents very well. I've thought of Mike frequently, obviously every 9/11. I've called his wife, and I see his wife often. I helped to, immediately after his death, I helped to raise money for a statue that was installed at the golf course where we all played as kids. A little putter boy statue, a little boy putting with the same statue that's in front of Pinehurst Golf Course, but it was installed in his memory, a bronze statue, not with any plaque or any name, but it's something that's symbolic, that's there for all of us that knew Mike, to a reminder. It's something that we put there in his memory and to honor him.
Do you think that the attack could have been averted?
I do think so, because Osama bin Laden was someone that that the world knew about. At least two presidents before had known about Osama bin Laden. He had mounted attacks on embassies in other countries in Africa, and Middle East. He was known to be an enemy of the United States. Al-Qaeda was known, and he was known. It was known that he was coming to hurt Americans, and there were actually opportunities to get him before. He had attacked an embassy. He had attacked a couple embassies in Africa and Middle East. He had attacked a warship. A number of attacks that were known to be linked to him. And the United States did have the opportunity to capture him and to bring him to justice, but they did not. It was not a priority. And looking back, I think it's a shame that they did not get him. I think President Clinton had the opportunity, but he was distracted by other things. And I guess of all the presidents, I blame President Clinton the most for not bringing Osama to justice.
What was your reaction when Osama bin Laden was killed by American soldiers?
That was another time when I was very emotional. I do remember I cried. I felt it was kind of the ending of a long, painful period, a culmination of a lot of pain. The other thing I did immediately was call his dad. I spoke to his dad for a while, and I called his wife. I spoke to his wife for a while, and we both broke down. It was very emotional. It's very sad. But so rather than rejoice in the fact that his killer was killed, it was kind of a sombering moment, a time to remember Mike, the victim, and reflect. We didn't celebrate. It was just another milestone in this whole story of Mike Finnegan and his tragedy. But it wasn't a time to rejoice.
Thank you.